very, very different ways. Now, on the one hand, I do want to begin by welcoming in KGMI. I'll do that all week long. Our Bellingham, Washington brand new affiliate. It is News Talk 790 up there in Bellingham and 96.5 FM, KGMI.com. Welcome aboard. I am not often, indeed, it's rare. It is very rare, indeed, for me to be of two minds before I begin a show. But if you are listening to the podcast, the rundown, which has three parts, the pre-show rundown, the rundown, and the post-rundown, you will know that Dwayne and I were talking before the show about whether I should go turn to the dark side. Now, the dark side would spend the entire show like Larry O'Connor, who's a good friend of ours and a host in Washington, D.C., or Kurt Schlichter or Guy Benson, who are three men who inexplicably love the royals. Kurt Schlichter has a big picture of Queen Elizabeth in his kitchen. Guy Benson gets Royalty magazine. Larry O'Connor watches The Crown pretty much in an endless loop at his home. I don't get it. I'm actually a little D-Democrat, and we fought a revolution to get away from it. I'm an Anglophile, but that's Churchill and the Royal Navy. It's not the whole royal madness and the crown and stuff like that. But there are hosts out there, and I'm not including friends like Dana Loesch and Laura Ingraham, who are women talk show hosts. I don't know what they think about the royals. It's just so odd that Kurt Schlichter is a royalist. And I mean, just he's into Meghan Markle's outfits. He talks a lot about the shoes choices that she makes. Guy Benson is worried about Archie and his cousins. Larry O'Connor spent most of yesterday's show. He does an afternoon show on the Afternoon Drive in D.C. Very influential show, very important. Afternoon Drive in D.C. is very important. And Larry spent the whole time talking, sobbing actually, about whether Harry could reconcile with his brother. And so some people will go that way. Then there's the real news. Vaccinated Americans, according to the CDC, it's safe for you to go out with vaccinated Americans, which really shouldn't surprise. Otherwise, there's not much point in the vaccines. But the CDC says we don't know if you can become an asymptomatic carrier once you've had the vaccine. And later on, I'm going to talk with Dr. Marshall, senator from Mississippi, about one shot will do you or two shots will do you. There's a debate about that. That's coming up later in the show. I could talk about the fact that Joe Biden is going to return chaos to every college campus in America. Betsy DeVos having issued rules during her tenure at education that granted more due process rights to students accused of sexual assault. It was a sort of a hanging judge approach until the Trump administration came in and said, let's return basic due process to the accused. Could talk about the border crisis, but that's going to get worse, a lot worse, before it gets better. Could talk to you about Roy Blunt. We love Roy Blunt, great senator from Missouri. He announced that, along with Rob Portman and Pat Toomey and Ron Johnson, he's leaving. Ron Johnson has not said he's leaving for sure, but it looks like he's leaving. Republicans don't like being in the minority after they've been in the majority. They'll probably get the majority back in 2022, certainly by 2024. But a lot of these guys don't want to wait 4 years in the minority. They can't move their stuff, and they're bored. House progressives are voting for the big $1.9 trillion. We knew that. And the really esoteric story, there are two really interesting stories. One is esoteric. One is very, very common. The very common story is that the Bidens had to dump the dogs. Well, his little German Shepherd bit somebody, the young German Shepherd, and Champ's too old to move. And we love old dogs. I've got a place in my heart for old dogs. I've never been a dog owner because I'm allergic, but I am a grand dog owner. And I love my Westie grand dog, but it never bit me. And apparently the Biden German Shepherd is a rescue dog who's passive aggressive with everybody except Joe and Jill. And he bit somebody. So back to Delaware with him. And that, we could talk about what to do with dogs that turn on your friends. Because it's actually a very difficult situation. My brother-in-law had a dog he loved. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law had a rescue dog that they loved, but the rescue dog didn't love anybody but them. And they were Snarling didn't love anybody but them. And that's probably because the dog was abused. But that's a very common problem. Or the dark side. We could talk about the royals. Meghan and Harry's interview indicates racism of royal family lingers. This is a Washington Post story by Ashley Fetters and Jennifer Hansen. And it really is quite remarkable. The tabs have gone crazy over that interview. Then Meghan and Harry, aristocratic victims of our time. The Gerard Baker, best column written on this, is by Gerard Baker in the Wall Street Journal. In the Telegraph, Joe Biden praises the Duchess of Sussex courage during her Oprah Winfrey interview. Then in the Financial Times, from fairy tale to culture war, Britain gripped by royal race row. Or I could talk about the IAEA saying that Iran is enriching uranium with advanced centrifuges, meaning they're breaking out. So there are two ways to go, the royals and everything else. 1-800-520-1234. I'm going to do what every good talk show host in America does. I'm going with the royals. And I've never done two royal shows in a row. I've done one royal show every now and then. When Harry married Meghan, I did that show on that because every TV station in the world was tuned into a royal wedding. And, you know, there's an old saying, don't spit in the wind. That is absolutely what I'm not going to spit in the wind. I'm going to go with the royals. 1-800-520-1234. Is there a lesson here for us? One, never have a monarchy. I've said sometimes we ought to adopt in California when I lived there a constitutional amendment establishing a monarchy in California as an absolute monarchy is the only way to restore the state to a sliver of its past greatness. But when you see stuff like this, you begin to realize, nah. Here's Gerard Baker. When some future historian, or perhaps some honest parodist of our modern mores, seeks an event that captures the inversion at the core of our continuing cultural revolution, he should examine closely the television spectacle that aired on CBS Sunday evening. To 17 million people, I might add, 17 million people watched this. When I was a panelist at the second Republican debate in 2016 at the Reagan Library, it was a heck of a show, went for 3.5 hours, had a 21 million live viewers. So this was almost as important to Americans as a presidential debate. There they were, Baker continues, assembled dreamily in the verdant grounds of a California mansion. Poster victims of our irredeemably unjust system. The sixth in line to the throne of the United Kingdom. His wife, a so-so actress who nonetheless enjoyed considerable fortune before she married into the highest levels of the English aristocracy, alongside one of the most successful television celebrities on the planet, bemoaning the injustices that had befallen them in a systemically cruel society. You'd struggle to find a better metaphor for one of the dominant narratives of our age. Our elites parading their grievances and preoccupations for the masses, demanding sympathy, issuing a call for the ordinary people to do better to acknowledge their own sinfulness. Economic inequality is greater than it has been in decades and widening still further after a great recession and a global pandemic. The poorest neighborhoods in this country, many of them dominated by ethnic minorities, are beset by levels of violent crime and disorder not seen in a generation. Educational opportunities and acquiescence, of the most blighted are drowning in a sea of neglect. Ideological rectitude and acquiescence to the demands of teachers' unions. All the while, we are forced to listen as chief executives, tenured academics, Hollywood celebrities, and now a prince and his wife lecture us about what are supposed to be real systemic flaws in our society. The terrible legacy of American history, sexism, racism, and transphobia. The endless stream of microaggressions caused by an errant word. A contentious writer of the illustrations in a Dr. Seuss book. None of this is to deny that our three figures up there on their little Californian cavalry on Sunday have, like all of us, had to bear their crosses. Oh, that's Gerard Baker's right. I think that's why I find it so distasteful that I have to go down the dark road for 2 days in a row of when Harry met Meghan and Oprah. 1-800-520-1234. Are you following this? Do you care? Has the world lost its mind about when Harry met Meghan and Oprah? 1-800-520-1234, connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.